Hello everyone, I welcome you all to another video by Legacy IAS where we're going to talk about something that India can be proud of. It was a diplomatic achievement that India got at the IEA conference, and that is where India actually, in spite of not being an important member of AUKUS, it managed to have a mandate favoring its position and favoring the allies, the member states of AUKUS. And that is where we have something to achieve vis-a-vis China. All of that is what we're going to discuss here. But before we begin, let us have a look at what this entire organization is all about. Now, AUKUS is basically an organization which is specifically focused as an Indo-Pacific coalition. Okay, a coalition which is mentioned or which is meant for the Indo-Pacific region, having member states like Australia, United Kingdom, and United States. All right, it's been almost a year since this particular organization has been formed. Now, Indo-Pacific has been gaining attention of the entire world over the years because of course, China's aggressionist tendencies and its encircling policies in the Indo-Pacific region, and how India is really growing up to be a great, strong economy, a strong diaspora, being one of the most important nations as far as the Indo-Pacific region is concerned. So in that context, this particular AUKUS was basically meant as a security partnership aimed to transform Australia's perception of the way it perceives its capacity, its capability, and how it has its relationship with its oldest allies. This particular partnership basically recognizes very important strategic environment that is there in the Indo-Pacific region, and there is a realization and a demand that we need a much more collaborative and integrated approach as far as deterrence is concerned, to leverage the combined defense technology and industrial bases of all these three countries of Australia, UK, and the United States. So that is where one needs to really understand and look into the entire rationale behind AUKUS. It is basically aimed at leveraging the nuclear cooperation to facilitate what kind of outcomes we are looking for in the Indo-Pacific region, what kind of strategic outcomes we are looking at in the Indo-Pacific region, enhancing Australia's military capabilities and binding it with an even long-term relationship with Britain as well as United States. So it's very much of a organization which where rather Australia happens to be one of the most important players. To deliver Australia a fleet of conventionally armed and nuclear powered submarines. Okay, this is where the core lies, that Australia will be armed with these nuclear powered submarines and deepen security cooperation in a lot of other areas which are relating to artificial intelligence in defense, quantum computing, cyber warfare, and lot of underwater technologies. Security arrangement, as far as in the Indo-Pacific is concerned, you cannot leave out India, and this AUKUS is expected to create a stable balance of power in the Indo-Pacific region. So this particular entire organization, how has it been a departure? How is it different? It's different, especially from United States perspective, because now US will be sharing technology of the military nuclear propulsion. This military nuclear propulsion is essentially used to power submarines, all right, with a lot of speed, stealth, as well as range and also endurance. So this military nuclear propulsion, which was basically meant to power these submarines, was previously only shared with the United Kingdom. Now it is letting go, US is letting go of this exclusivity, and rather more so it's taboo in transferring this particular propulsion technology to other allies. And in this case we are talking of United States. In this case, United States, we are talking with respect to Australia. So USA is also ensuring a long-term role as far as the traditional European allies are concerned, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, when we're speaking of the Indo-Pacific region, a player which has gained a lot of attention in the recent years is France. France has a lot of territories as well as naval presence in the Indo-Pacific region. It has been involved actively in this region and trying to focus on a lot of security challenges which crop up in the Far Eastern region and trying to promote some kind of a regional trilateral coalition along with Australia and India. So, France has also been very active in this particular region in trying to come up with such kind of bilateral as well as multilateral and regional cooperation agreements. As far as India is concerned, India can really capitalize upon this friendship that it shares with France as well as the interest of France in the Indo-Pacific region. It can have more strengthened security cooperation by actually trying to procure the nuclear submarines from France. So in that sense, there's a lot of prospect as far as India is concerned. But if we look at more specifically, what is it in store as far as this AUKUS is concerned and India's position in the Indo-Pacific region? Essentially, if you look at India and particularly in the Indo-Pacific, it is faced from a lot of threats as far as or from China is concerned. All right. So it is not having too much of time as well as attention and even resources to focus on the maritime zone. In this regard, AUKUS can basically help India confront the challenges that it's facing from China. It also can basically, essentially, India has always been of the opinion that it tries to maintain this balance of power, but also focusing always on a second strike capability. It is not the first one to strike, and that's why any kind of a nuclear submarine attack will only be to cope with China's growing naval power. So it is not a first attacker, it's always on the defense and trying to often retaliate, but not the first one to launch something like this. So this kind of an agreement is basically expected to at least strengthen or balance the power that is there in the Indo-Pacific region. There are a lot of other alliances that India is a part of, definitely the Quadrilateral Alliance. But it's also good if a lot of those other alliances are kind of overlapped with AUKUS so that ultimately you strengthen the entire cooperation and not dependent upon only one particular security alliance. Now, as far as in this context, if we look at what happened recently, whereby India really kind of foiled China's plans, India really hampered China's plans. China is obviously in objection of the organization AUKUS, and at this recent IAS summit, it went on to argue that the nations of AUKUS, the member states of AUKUS are basically violating the responsibilities that they have under the NPT. In fact, it criticized IAEA for not doing anything in this regard. All right. So it even was trying to, put a bill in place, and it had even drafted that particular bill. But what India did, India was working very closely with a lot of the IAEA member states, and it tried to create so much support. It used its deft diplomacy and tried to create so much support among the smaller nations that they would ultimately oppose China's proposal. So ultimately, what happened was China was embarrassed because it withdrew from filing or withdrew from this resolution that it had put forward before the AUKUS alliance, apprehending that it would not get a lot of majority support because India had basically ensured that the smaller nations do not support China's initiative. All right. So in that way, it actually spoiled China's plans and it embarrassed China by making it withdraw from its anti-AUKUS resolution at the IAEA. So it speaks volumes about India's back channel diplomacy, India's relations with other nations, and more importantly, a realization among nations across the globe, especially the smaller ones, that China is really being expansionist and over enthusiastic, over ambitious, okay, where these countries' sovereignty and integrity is threatened. So there's this common realization which India really capitalized upon and used it to its advantage to kind of damage these plans that China had within itself. So in that sense, it was definitely a very big diplomatic achievement as far as India's history, India's foreign policy is concerned. So that is all I have as far as the discussion on AUKUS, what happened recently at the meeting, and how do we take things forward from here. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, let me know by liking the video, share it with your fellow friends, and also subscribe to Legacy IAS. Thank you so much.